In this week's episode of Drifters, the Drifters and the Ends have a bloody battle to the death, with Toyohisa throwing down with Joan of Arc and Yoichi going toe-to-toe with Gilles de Rais. Sorcery, swords, and slaughter. That was exactly what was going down in this week's episode of Drifters, which was basically just a big 20-minute action scene. And you know I'm okay with that. Toyohisa versus the very insane Joan of Arc, and Yoichi going up against the Terminator, Gilles de Rais. I only call him the Terminator simply because this guy can take a lot of punishment. He gets pummeled by hundreds of arrows in this episode, some of them going right into some vital spots and straight into his face, and the dude continues to keep on kicking. And what's best about this fight, for me personally, is honestly how it ends. And the main reason for that is that we finally got to see Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid return, and they gave Gilles de Rais a good old taste of American lead. Not to be outdone, Nobunaga proves that he can take down any cavalry, no matter how intimidating they can be. And of course he was helped out by the elves, who continue to be master bow and arrow users. Speaking of which, Yoichi versus Gilles de Rais. Honestly, I think that was my favorite fight from this episode, if only for the fact that Yoichi's fighting style is so unique. Kind of reminiscent of Legolas from Lord of the Rings, and a little bit of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where he's able to sort of dodge all of Gilles' attacks, but also jump up on his massive elf-destroying spear just so that he can get him right in the face. There are a lot of great moments from their battle, and it's just one of the reasons to check out this week's episode. Toyohisa versus Joan of Arc was also pretty fantastic. But the main reason that I like this fight is that we actually got to see Ominu get involved in the battle. She's more than just a pretty face. She actually has these magical abilities, these tags which she can place on the ground, which will create these giant stone walls. And Toyohisa actually manages to use these to his advantage. At first, they're basically used as a shield to get away from Joan of Arc's fire, but what he does is he has Ominu actually put one in the ground and then place another one on the wall itself, which he stands on. When this happens, it creates another wall which flies forward, propelling Toyohisa right into Joan of Arc, which not only allows him to attack her, but also to put her in a well. I really love this scene a lot, especially because of the symbolism behind it. The fact that Joan of Arc was actually burned at the stake, and her defeat is going to come in the form of water. Something that she desperately needed when she was being killed and betrayed by all of these crazy-ass people. This series is really easy to compare to Fate's Day Night, as the premises are kind of similar in many senses. I will say, though, that the characters are completely different from that. The Gilles de Rais from Fate's Day Night is nothing like the one from this series, albeit they do have similar backstories. They are based on historical figures. Speaking of which, apparently the leader of the freaking Octoberist is a drifter himself. He's some Japanese guy that I've frankly never heard of, and I looked up a little bit of information about him. Apparently he's a very famous magician, which actually makes sense, as he leads a group of magicians himself. I can't wait to see how he's going to ally himself with Nobunaga, Toyohisa, and Yoichi as the episodes go on. What I will say is, this episode was just bloody and badass. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Drifters? Just like I said, this was a very action-packed, high-octane episode, which had some great production value behind it. Like I said, it's kind of hard to choose my favorite action scene, but I am leaning a little bit more towards Yoichi's battle with Gilles de Rais. Gilles de Rais in this episode was just monstrous and scary. His introduction at the beginning of the episode, where he kills this elf with his massive spear, is over the top and ridiculous. He basically just stabs this guy, lifts him up in the air, and his body just completely, breaks in half. And just the way that he's able to swing his massive spear around, destroying everything in his wake with these, giant, massive waves of purple energy, just looks really awesome. Yoichi at first is incredibly confident in the battle, almost enjoying it just a little too much until he realizes this bastard is not going down without a fight. So at the end of the day, this was just an amazingly badass action episode of Drifters, where we got our first major confrontation between the main group of Drifters going up against the Ends. They're now going to be reunited with the other Drifters from the series, and I can't wait to see the interactions between these characters, because everybody has like a big culture shock moment when they meet these people from different historical events. Like, Toyohisa doesn't know what France is. He doesn't know what Christ is. Everything that Joan of Arc was saying to him was just completely strange and foreign. And I can't wait to see the reactions to the two Americans, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I can't wait to see more of these guys in action. They definitely know when to bring the heat to the battle. And this week's episode was badass. I loved it. It wasn't a perfect episode. There were a few animation moments which I think could have looked a little better, but mostly that's just nitpicking on my part. That being said, this was a solid-ass episode of Drifters, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Drifters fans. You might see something you like. If you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment or two, and if you liked the review, make sure to give it a like. I will see you guys next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.